Couple more minutes and we'll get things going. Looks like we've got plenty of seats, which is great. They gave us lots of room, which is amazing. Just to give you guys an idea of what we're looking at for the next 2.5 hours, we're going to start off by doing some presentations and going over just AI 101 for the first half. The second half, we're going to give you guys a 5-minute bathroom break because I've always appreciated when I got those. So at 3 o'clock, we'll take a 5-minute break. You guys can go do whatever you need to do. We'll come back. We'll do some Q&A. We'd like this to be a little bit of you guys talking to us too, so that we can hear what your thoughts are and what your considerations and concerns may be about AI. And so we'll make this a little bit more collaborative, I think, than just a one-way street. And then at 4:05, if anyone is interested, we'd like to give you the opportunity to leave early and go to the Habitat for Humanity History of Black Homeownership, which is upstairs. I had the opportunity to go and check that out. It is sponsored by Black Home Initiative. If any of you guys know Marty Koistra, he's been a staple in this community for quite a long time, and they've put up an amazing experience upstairs. So we'd love for you guys to leave at 4:05 and go check that out. It is a little bit out of the way when you're going through the main kind of concourse, the long hall. You have to go up the stairs to get to it. Once you get up the stairs, you'll have no problem finding it. But please do go and experience that if you are inclined to do so.
I guess we'll hit it. We're two entrepreneurs, and we're up here, I guess, because we have direct experience launching an AI-enabled product, using language, using AI, using machine learning to solve complex problems. In Brian's case, he uses AI to help people model cities, more livable cities, more affordable cities, better, organization of cities. He can take property information and combine it and find the best use of a piece of property. He can also tell you where to put affordable housing to optimize the quality of that affordable housing, the access to transportation, all the things. And he's going to be able to demo that and put it some interactive. I created a company that used analytics to better value real estate, to understand the forces that act on real estate every day that change its value. We literally can take a house and tell you what its real-time value is, changing in real time every second. Don't believe that? Well, actually, your houses are changing value every day, not just when they're appraised, bought, or sold. There are economic forces in every community that change the housing market every day. It might be the high tech that drives Seattle, the tourism and entertainment parks that drive Orlando's housing market, or some other big industries but you can take those industries that drive that housing market, you can index them, you can track how they're performing and correlate it to the price of a house, to how neighborhood values are going up or down. So if you think about that, what Brian does, what our company does, which is why we're both here, you can model better cities, more affordable cities, cities that work better. And that's our profession. Now we're connected to being here for different reasons. He's actually on the planning commission for the city of Redmond because he cares about how his city gets developed. He's raising a family there. So he takes his time to help figure out how we create a better Redmond. I'm a director at a Christian ministry called Vine Maple Place, and they help solve chronic generational homelessness, the pattern that just keeps remaking itself generation to generation. So instead of enabling people, giving them short-term benefits, short-term handouts, we walk them, love them off the streets into safety, into stability, and then ultimately to sustainability. And that's a major initiative in my life. And that's my connection to being here and meeting people that are helping with this affordable housing problem. So that's just a little bit of our backgrounds. Whoops, it never actually went. This is just a summary of the two companies and why we care so much about being here.
I only brought one extra pair of eyes today.
Yeah. we're going to talk about just the first top-level things about AI. You guys have all heard a lot. You're going to hear a lot more. But there's a lot you're not going to hear about. There are thousands of people working on AI right now, doing all kinds of crazy things. And some of them are going to make major impactful contributions to this world, and some of them are going to threaten this world. So we're going to walk through all that. But first, I just want to kind of set a tone for how I think everybody should think about AI. Whoops, you warned me. First of all, it's a tool like anything else. It's an important tool. Ignore it to your personal or professional peril. You don't get on board with this, you're going to be somewhat handicapped in terms of doing your job, ultimately. It's being used by students. There's already situations where the teacher, the people in charge have no idea how the people that they're overseeing are using AI. And it's moving very fast, which we'll talk about. But this is not something you can ignore, hope it goes away, hope it's a trend, hope it's a fad. It's going to present itself all across our society, and it's important to get in front of it. Wow, this thing is trigger happy. Holy mackerel. He warned me, but not enough. So my suggestion is lean in to the degree you can. I'm not telling everybody in this room to go become an AI expert, but understand how it can be a tool for you without understanding the back end and the underneath and the underpinning technologies and specificity of how they make certain things happen, but embrace it as a professional, embrace it as a person, because it's going to be everywhere. And it's important that we all accept it. And this is embrace it, you know. We've seen a lot of technologies developed in my lifetime. I've been really lucky to see just some incredible technology advancements across the entire page. When I graduated from college in 1984, we saw the launch of the Apple Mac, and I wasn't even interested in one. Somebody asked me to buy one because I had a student discount, and I gave it, and he said, well, you can take it out and play with it. I'm like, why would I want to do that? And I've worked 42 years in computers and software, so I maybe was a little slow to embrace things, but eventually did. And it's important to embrace these and just find the good that they can really drive in this world. But we cannot trust this technology. It's going to be in the hands of bad actors. There's no way we're going to keep pace with what it's doing and how it's doing it. We're not going to be able to legislate it fast enough. We couldn't keep track of social media and its impact on society and our kids and even adults. How are we going to keep track of what people are doing in AI, legislate it, control it, guide it, bound it? It's not going to happen. It's going to go faster, and especially in the hands of bad actors. So we cannot trust it. We have to always ask questions. We have to always be poking. We have to always be interrogating what people are doing and how they're doing it. I think I missed one, which is the garbage in, garbage out. That's a big part of it. AI is only as smart as the data you give it to learn on. It's only as smart as the data it's only as accurate. It's only as truthful. It's only as high integrity as the data you give it. If you put bias in the training data, you will get AI that projects bias. So there are some things we can do and question in terms of what data are you using to train your AI. And these cannot be black box formulas. They have to be open and transparent and show you the training data so that we can trust it. And that's going to be vital. Speed. So I'm sure everybody's seen a slide like this. How fast we adopted a new technology. It just gets quicker and quicker and quicker. I've been very fortunate to come in on the PC and how that developed. You know, it used to be people that could put together a Heath kit for their extra bedroom, and they were pretty geeky people at the start. And we really didn't understand the power, how they interact in our daily lives, and why we would need one in every home. But I was very much a part of the cell phone adoption. One of the first corporations to ever purchase and procure cell phones for all of their employees was Motorola back in the early 80s. And when we did that, we were kind of a test case for the productivity of a cell phone. And I remember the glee of skipping that line at the phone booth at the airport, which used to be quite long, the pay phones. There was only bank so big, and everybody needed to check in and get their voicemail and talk to their bosses. And man, I could just sit there. I was pretty gleeful about that. But even so, it took 13 years for cell phones to become adopted by 25% of the United States population. Partly cost, but we have now, at a dizzying rate, adopted technology. And I can tell you that 70% of high school students use AI. I can tell you that you all use AI somewhere, you just probably don't know it. When you're interacting with businesses, when you're interacting with software, when you're searching on the internet, there's a lot of AI behind that. And so we're well past any threshold in less than a year. And it's just going to get more rampant. All right. So shifting gears, we're going to talk a little bit about AI 101. And if you have any questions, please bring them up. Brian, please chip in. Man, this thing is trigger. I'm going to divide it into 3 simple, basic outputs of AI. And I'm oversimplifying. So please, this is a way to digest and understand AI at the most simplest level. The first one is it's able to, correlate data. You can take lots of data sets, just put them in a big data lake, and run machine learning operations on them and find correlations. So when this whole big data was a thing that got labeled and named, and everybody started paying attention to it, which means investors invested in it, entrepreneurs, stayed up late at night trying to think of ways to progress big data, use big data as a leverage. Data is the oil of the 21st century. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, but entrepreneurs lived on the fact that data was our new oil and it was our new economy. Well, there's a book that started that and named Big Data. And one of the examples in that book that they used was Walmart. So Walmart has a lot of intuition about what people buy, when they buy it, why they buy it, and sometimes they don't. So the merchandising team decided to run some correlation on sales at stores before major hurricanes or floods, major disasters, tornadoes coming. Anytime there was a pending disaster, they started looking at all their sales data. And now this is different than saying, I have a premise, I have a theory, now let's go prove it with data. This is just, what would the data tell me? I don't have any opinion about what it's going to tell me. It's just going to tell me something. Well, of course, people buy batteries. You can intuit that. People buy water. You can intuit that. People buy flashlights. You can intuit that. People buy Pop-Tarts. Well, actually, when you think about it, I think it does make sense. You're in a storm cellar. You've got some kids. You need to calm them down. The shelf life on Pop-Tarts is what? Longer than any of our lifespans. So it actually made sense. So if you walk into a Walmart today and there's a pending hurricane coming, you're going to see Pop-Tarts right next to flashlights, batteries, and water. They also figured out that orange cars are more reliable. This is a different example in that book. Now, this is something that you can't really intuit, and you can't really find the why. Orange cars are more reliable. That is statistically a fact. They have less repair bills. They break down less. Now, it could be because you special ordered that car in that special orange, because it doesn't often come in that color, and you take great care of it because it's your special order car. Or maybe more people just see them on the road and don't hit them. I don't know. But if you're looking for a used car and your choice is between any color and an orange car, the orange car is going to cost you less. That's just correlation. And munging these massive data sets is possible with AI and coming up with lots more interesting things. Okay. Brian, you take over and talk about using AI to generate city planning.
So we did not create these 2 models of cities, nor would we ever. Thank God. I don't want to live there or there.
I listed the open art prompt at the top.
But what's cool about this is these were created by generative AI. So a lot of you guys are probably using generative AI right now via large language models like ChatGPT or Bard or some of those other DALL-E type technologies for creating visuals. But in the real estate world, generative design is allowing us to model things at the neighborhood level, at the city level, at the parcel level, on an assemblage basis. I'm going to show you some of those right now.
I would never rely on my typing to do that. I'm a 2.5 finger typer. Do you want to swap out the?
Can't get in.
We did test run this.
We're going to come back to generation in just a second. Move on to the next one. I'm going to get into this, and we'll swap back.
Okay. We'll work on that. So one of the case studies we wanted to bring up just to talk about, we're no experts in this particular project. We're massive fans. We're curious. We're looking at all the positive and negative and all the implications of the Atlanta Beltline, which is a big part of, apparently the mayor just announced it's a big part of their re-election campaign to create social housing. This is a 22-mile loop, if you're not familiar with it, that goes around the city of Atlanta. It has little spurs. It has displaced affordable housing everywhere, which they've accounted for, and they've created more affordable housing. It has regentrified neighborhoods. It has created really high-value, upscale neighborhoods instantly for people that want to be on this trail. It's created a new transportation way to get to work, to run your errands, to exercise, recreate, socialize. And it's getting bigger and more interesting every day. There's an economic impact of this, and these are all published by the Beltline associations that are associated with this project. And they were pulled right off of their own website. But creating 50,000 permanent jobs to manage, maintain, and otherwise keep this whole Beltline optimized and safe and secure. They put in 5,600 affordable housing units for workers that were building out this and completing this project. It's not even complete yet. So this is already just completely revitalizing the city of Atlanta and the kind of, I'd call it the medium suburbs around, if you've been to Atlanta. They have beautiful suburbs, they have a vibrant city, and then they have these neighborhoods around that are hit and miss, and this really runs all the way through every one of them. So this has a chance to really create a lot of diversity and a lot of social impact of this project. But this is also, exactly the type of thing that AI can help model, help you know the challenges before you start moving dirt and erecting, buildings. Modeling the traffic flow, modeling the opportunities, modeling the job creation, modeling the economic impact. And of course, modeling its impact on current and existing neighborhoods that get changed dramatically. Our company's been looking at the values of properties around the light rail stations in Seattle. Many of them haven't opened yet, but what's happened to the value of that real estate around there. Now, how far? Is it a mile away? Is it a mile and a half? Maybe it's a mile today. Maybe it's 2 miles in 2 or 3 more years after it opens and shows more traffic. But the commercial value of that real estate changes dramatically. And that's a massive training model for us to use and help better plan the next project in the other city. So these are important training models to look at and learn everything we can from, and it's a learning system. We were going to run some models, so I'll just let him keep worrying that. We're going to actually show you where affordable housing could be built around the Beltline in Atlanta, for instance, which is an incredible feat. What's that?
We can do it when you guys are ready.
Okay, let's do it. There we go. So now we're in real live tech, not a bunch of PowerPoint, which is always fun for entrepreneurs.
So what you guys are seeing here is a live demo in the City Builder product we've got about 182,000 parcels that we're looking at once. And if we zoom in, you're going to see generative design start to build building envelopes out of each of those blue dots. The first thing we did was click apartments because most of you guys are interested in housing. That's why you're here. So we've gone from 180,000 parcels to 25,707 in about 2 seconds. Someone shout a number out as far as how many units you want to build.
250.
Okay, 250.
Looks like it went up. Oh,
So we went from 20-some thousand. Now we're showing 1,364 parcels that will support 250 multifamily units by right, and we've done that in just a few seconds. Let's take a look. How many architects in the room?
oh
Lots
wow.
of architects. You guys are familiar with this. For those of you who aren't architects, this is a very early, crude, preliminary massing. But what we're doing is trying to figure out what could a building that's optimized for the most gross floor area or space or units on this parcel look like. So our job is not to become an architect. Our job is to try to maximize these big, crude boxes and then get these over with a developer, with an engineer, with an architecture firm, and have them design. But very quickly, as you can see, we can figure out what this might look like. Interesting thing I learned about architecture is you never want to maximize gross floor area because then you would just end up with a bunch of big, gross boxes. Question right here.
Yeah, does this take into account any sort of like building code and permitting requirements for this jurisdiction?
Yeah, so these are all looking at by right or as of right zoning. So we spent the first 5 years for City Builder building this out in 156 cities in the US and Canada. So we can just very quickly say which of these parcels supports multifamily or townhomes or mobile homes or single family. And then with the massing and the understanding of lot line setbacks, max height, all of those types of things, we can show what could go on a parcel.
Any chance you did that for any cities in Washington State?
Washington State?
Yeah, this is what we're all considering.
Yeah, we started the company in Seattle, so we've got King, Pierce, and Snohomish County built out to scale.
Do you take into account like individual, if somebody sold their air rights, which happens?
Awesome question. Yeah, awesome question. No, and there is an opportunity for that. I would say there's one company I'm aware of in New York City that's focused on trying to get the data around air rights transfers or sales. I don't know if they're still in existence, but that was the only one I was aware of in the country.
You pulled zoning, but not necessarily title specific for properties.
Right. So we're not looking at air rights. If air rights have been transferred or sold, that could impact the capability to build on some of these. That's right. And in Chicago and in New York, that's a really big deal. Maybe less so in Seattle. Okay. I love this. Keep them coming. This is awesome. Yeah, this is Atlanta, but we'll go to Seattle. Fly all the way across the country here. Should be flying across the country here. It's a danger of a live demo. Okay, the question was, what are we searching? What's our data set? So we have 122 million US parcels. We also have identified 10 quintillion assemblages. So that's 10 with 19 zeros, number of ways that you could combine all of these parcels. Then we spent a bunch of years arguing with the US Patent and Trademark Office over the capability to get a patent to have an assemblage AI, figure out which assemblages made the most sense, and then ID them and build them out to highest and best use, because we found out when we met with, what was Paul Allen's real estate development, Vulcan?
Vulcan.
When we met with Vulcan, they said, nice work, guys, but we cut $50 million checks off the balance sheet of one of the richest men in the world, and we need bigger sites than individual parcels. So until you guys can figure out how to automate assemblage, have a nice day. So we spent 6 months trying that, and then 6 years trying to get a patent for it, which we got last year. So this is Seattle. This is home for me. I lived in South Lake Union for 7 years. I lived in Ballard. I lived in Wallingford. Now I have 5 kids, so I live on the east side, but my office is in Bellevue, and I live in Redmond. But this is where we started. Another interesting thing, you mentioned generation, you mentioned correlation. I think your third one is prediction. So not to steal the show, but
Perfect.
on prediction, in 2016, we started predicting the visual future of cities. And just to make sure no one thought we were taking credit for something that we didn't actually do, we posted our predictions online. So I don't use Twitter as much as I use other, like LinkedIn, but on Twitter, my pinned tweet is the very first future prediction of a city that we ever did, which was sometime in like June of 2016. Since then, organizations like the National Association of Realtors and others have studied that picture and graded it, and 72% of the buildings that we predicted now exist. So this is highly predictive.
Another question for you. You know what cities look like, and the biggest driver is land costs. So you factor that in as far as affordability versus market rate?
Yeah, I think I understand the question, but correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that the biggest factor of building affordable housing is the cost of the land?
Correct.
So what we've seen historically is, depending on the city and depending on, how expensive the land is, you're looking at anywhere between 10% and 40% of a development's cost being land. In an area where land is available forever and ever and people are building out, that might be closer to 10. But an area that is banded in by, lakes, rivers, mountains, what have you, the coasts, for example, then it could be closer to 40%. You look at Seattle, you look at San Francisco, areas where you've got a lot of, geographic boundaries stopping you from building out, then those land percentages of total development costs are gonna go up. And yes, we do break that out. We also look at, varying hard costs and soft costs. We're okay on the hard costs. I think soft costs are a little bit more challenging to model because entitlements change across the country and impact fees and things like that. Also, interest rates have been fun for the last 2.5 years. But what you're seeing right now is a bunch of townhomes. If you didn't build townhomes, you could click apartments and it would say, okay, here's the apartments. Right away, I'm seeing this one's got probably some capability to build as many as you want on an affordability basis. If you take 60% of those or 50% of those and build them affordable, you're probably getting unlimited FAR on this. We're also missing some open space requirements I'm aware of here. Another question you asked, I want to make sure that I answered, is can we search by current use? I think we can. So you could say, don't show me things that are already apartments. Don't show me things that are already being used as housing. Also, don't show me parks. I don't want to pave over paradise. Maybe for housing, but probably not. So yeah, we can look at all those different things.
So Brian, who's buying this software for these analytical tools, and what are they using it for?
The historic users of this have been enterprise. They're huge companies. Fortune 1000s, companies that have enterprise need for real estate across the United States and even internationally. What we're excited about is the opportunity, and part of the reason I accepted being here is the opportunity to work with nonprofits and the public sector. There's a huge belief inside our company and a need outside our company everywhere I'm looking that land needs to be used in such a way as to optimize publicly owned, church-owned, nonprofit-owned, university-owned land, and other lands, of course, too, but we have only so much control over those, to build as much affordable housing as we can. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to learn from all of you that have spent a lot more time thinking about that than we might have. So that's some generative design. I can show you more if you're interested, but actually I will after he's done.
Okay. We're going to,
I have one more question.
good.
Is it possible to change the parameters so that you could look at what would happen if increased density were allowed?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. That is a button called Customize. We shipped in March of last year, and what it allows us to do is look at every possible constraint in any zoning code and change it, and then rerun everything. So this would be useful, I believe, to developers, but also to planners, to planning commissions, to folks that want to model what-if scenarios, to architects, to people that want to go and say, hey, this works, but it's going to be way better if we can get this to happen. Let's model that and then show that, use that as evidence to see if we can get that exception or variance or even a wholesale zoning change, right, in a city.
So you're saying it would should be present data, and then it would do a prediction? Would do that as well?
What it does is models what's there, or shows you exactly what's there, and then you can change anything that you want to change. So you could change maximum dwellings units per lot, or minimum, or lot width, or min FAR, max FAR, max height, allowed parking, no parking required, setbacks above a certain height, all of these things that you architects, I'm sure, are very familiar with. But you planners, are there any planners out there? Awesome. 1, 2, 3. You planners are also quite familiar with, right? You spend a lot of time looking at this. So you can change any of these figures, and when you do that, you can rerun it, and you can model what-if scenarios. Thank you for that awesome question. Oh.
Does it reach beyond this? So how many kids would it, like if you created these units, what would it do to the population, and then need for water, and then need for a school, and the impact on the fire station, all of that stuff?
That's an awesome question. I think that speaks to societal impacts, demographic impacts, infrastructure impacts. No. We look at existing infrastructure. I'm going to show you this.
It's a great example of something that's coming. So I hope you appreciate the amount of data that he has curated, cleaned up, which is a massive part of the problem. A lot of these data sets are collected by various different organizations. They have different data schemas. They have inaccuracies. They have missing data. It's a big thing to do the data cleansing, to inject data where there's missing data on a reasonably probable hunch or some algorithm that's going to be accurate. I know we have the problem in the state of Maryland. I don't know why, they don't record the number of bedrooms in a house in Maryland. So
You can
you
get
have to
patchy
infer
data.
how many bedrooms are in a house by looking at what neighborhood it's in and what the likelihood it would have any number of bedrooms if there's missing data there. And if it hasn't sold, you have no idea. So, I'm sure he's got plenty of examples.
So your question on how many kids are going to move into an area if we build a school or something like that, we don't model that right now. We do look at existing utilities, and we try to help people figure out if there is existing kind of subterranean infrastructure. So that's mainly water, that's sewer. We haven't found a good source for fiber data, but that's really important so we can figure out if people can connect to the internet or for business too, right? Power is another really important consideration. This probably isn't something we'll spend a lot of time talking about today, but outside the city, there's a lot of need for power to make all of this AI go. So that's another big consideration right now.
Are you consulting with the city of Austin on that?
No. Comment? No comment? No.
Where are you collecting your data from? Are you using sources like a CoreLogic or something like that? Are you getting it straight from Zillow or Redfin?
This is commercial data, so it's.
I
gonna
could
be
spend the
more-
afternoon telling you where we're getting our data,
Yeah.
but we categorize them into 4 different buckets. We called them the 4 Ps starting 6 years ago, so there was a framework to work within. So that's paid, public, private, and proprietary data sources. So whenever we're evaluating a data source, the first question is, what bucket is it in? Number 2 is this going to be a data source that we can use forever and it's not going to be threatened or removed from us? And we built a really cool thing around it that then goes away. I think the third question is, do we have it at scale? We've said no to many, many, many data sets that only work in one state because we could show someone, hey, this cool analysis is available for you, and they say, cool, we want it in Atlanta too. It doesn't work in Atlanta. So it has to be available at scale. And we're north of 320 unique places that data comes into this right now. So yeah, good question.
I'm curious what you're doing to mitigate sort of immediate use of this tool. Because when I hear things like impact on schools or capacity of electricity, my mind immediately goes to some of these NIMBY arguments. We've all heard them when people say, "Oh, you're going to have 1 million kids in my school now," or the track tracks, which is the big one. But even I've heard power impacts. And I know that usually utilities follow development, right? Because we don't want a power company dictating where we can and cannot build. So I guess what I'm wondering is, how are you? I hope you're not marketing to the NIMBY forces.
I think everyone heard that question. So 2014 or 15, I can't remember which, I bought a shirt from Sonia Traus and Laura Foote in San Francisco, and it says legalize housing. They started the YIMBY movement, and now it's all over the country. So been big supporters of theirs for, I guess, a decade at this point. And we started the company with the mission to create happy, functional, sustainable communities. And affordable housing is a huge part of what we believe in. So yeah, if someone came to us and said, hey, can we use this to make sure to stop housing from being built in our neighborhood, we'd say, we'll get back to you. That'd be the last time we talk to them.
Are they dynamic data sets so that as things change, they're
Yeah.
being updated?
Good question. Dynamic data sets, yes. How often? The frequency of the updates depends on the source. So if it's a public source, like if it's Recorder, could be every day, could be less frequently than every day, but usually it's every day. That's going to be your best. If it's hard cost data, it might be every 90 days. That comes from a private source. If it's private data coming in from who knows where, that can be asynchronous. Obviously, assessor data doesn't come in very often because the assessments aren't very frequent, but it could be as infrequently as once a year. It could be as frequent as every day. As often as possible is great.
When you predict, like on your Twitter page, what a city will look like in the future, is that over a specific time period, or is it just sometime in the future? And then could we put in a possible zoning change and ask, what will this make our city look like in 10 years? What will it make it look like in 25 years?
Really great ideas. No, we don't do 10 or 25, we do 5 years. And I don't think we even accurately do 5 years because we don't model the difficulty to get something that you apply to build as of right by right through the process, right? The regulatory system. So permitting, any design review boards, any community acceptance or non-acceptance, any of that kind of stuff. We do know that New York's the hardest, San Francisco's second hardest. I can't remember what's third hardest, but you're looking 8 to 10 years to get something that plays by all the rules shovel ready in those places. And in some places like Houston, you're shovel ready tomorrow. There's no zoning, you own the land, check that you own the land, build your roller coaster. Great
Although,
ideas.
I was born and raised in Seattle. The economy, the housing market, it acted very differently before the high-tech boom. we don't use data for Seattle more than 8 years old because it has shifted. The market dynamics have shifted. So if you're using data from when I grew up, when it was a bedroom community of Boeing workers, it's not going to be accurate in terms of predicting any type of housing, any type of urban development at all. It's a very different city now. And so some of the older data is not going to be useful. Now, learning models have gotten such that when you give them a data set that doesn't improve their output in terms of accuracy or integrity, it will weight that data set down continually, even to 0 if it's not effective. And that data set might not help the accuracy of the model until you add a 3rd or 4th or 5th data set that in combination now it becomes helpful to the output, the accuracy. But these are closed loop learning models that will take the data and say, did it help me be more accurate? If not, weight it down. If yes, weight it up until it reaches that optimal weighting. That's how smart these models are now. They are learning models. So, if you put a 10-year-old data set or a 15-year-old data set in Seattle for residential housing, it's not going to help. It's actually going to confuse the model, and it'll just discount it to 0 because that was a very different housing market.
I built this video for students, mostly, grad and undergrad students, because it does a bunch of flashy stuff and they don't get bored. And I'll let you guys watch this, but this kind of very quickly goes through a lot of the capabilities the technology has. This is one that we put out in 2023. The one before that I think I used was from 2018. This might even have some sound associated with it. It's okay if you want. Students love this. So this last part you're seeing is essentially a game of SimCity that we've set the technology to play with itself. So it sits back there and just designs cities over and over and over on servers until it finds something that it feels good about. And then it says, okay, this is my final project, and turns it in. That'll wake you up, right? All right, I'm going to give it back to you.
Well, I think there's a couple points here. Somebody asked about, predicting family structures and how many kids or types of populations, diversity, who then, inhabits these developments that we build. I think you can see that this is a really important foundational layer to adding that modeling on top of it. What's it going to require in terms of infrastructure, power, water, sewer? What's it going to require in terms of open space? What's it going to require in terms of transportation? So you can see if you haven't done this first, you have no chance of doing that. And it's so much easier now that Brian's built this foundation to keep adding additional intelligent layers on this. So the second thing is more of a time-old challenge here about people using this tool for their own purposes. And if I can tweak a quote from Mark Twain, you have lies, damn lies, and analytics, which is the new form of statistics, right? So you can use these tools to confirm your biases by manipulating it, I'm sure in multiple ways, and they'll always find ways to do that. The real point here is that the hustle of the entrepreneur, the corporate America, the capitalist drive, is going to outpace city planners. It's going to outpace governments. It's going to outpace, cities, municipalities, communities have to get ahead with these tools. This is your only chance to compete and preserve what cities you want to be built. getting ahead and using these tools and being as smarter than the people that are trying to develop them. So I think it's an imperative, again, back to the original thing, to embrace these tools, learn how they can preserve great cities, great neighborhoods, great municipalities, and build the kind of environments we want to live in against the capital drive of building, economically motivated projects.
David, can I comment?
Big editorial, sorry. Yeah, of course.
We love to compete if you're a private sector component or player. We're going to compete with you. But if you're a public sector player, if you're a nonprofit, if you're an NGO, if you're a community-based organization, we are not in competition with you. We would like to collaborate with you. That's our approach.
On the prediction, this is a minutia example. It's getting into the weeds, but we applied AI to figure out what your home's worth. Well, if we know what it's worth in a certain configuration, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, it's got a view, big yard, corner lot, whatever that means, and we can correlate that to value. We can figure out all the transactions that are happening, the ones that are most relevant, those homes that price behave like yours, may not be the house next door. We started in Seattle because it's such an eclectic set of neighborhoods. You can have a house across the street that's got a view of the Sound, and the one on the other side of the street doesn't have much of a backyard because it's up against a hill. And our neighborhoods are less, homogeneous than a lot of other cities. But we can also then say, well, what if you upgraded your house? What if you changed it? What if you added a bedroom, added square footage, added a fireplace, remodeled your kitchen, one of the more popular things. So we can literally take a phone, take a picture of your current your kitchen, then you can select a picture of the kitchen you want. Could be off of Pinterest, could be off of House, could be your neighbor's kitchen. You play bridge at on Wednesday night, and you've always loved their kitchens. You take a picture of their, and we'll actually figure out how to model a kitchen that looks like yours in terms of configuration. You can build the same thing. And we'll tell you what the house is going to be worth if you remodeled it. We'll upgrade the appraisal of that house, map it to the Uniform Appraisal Code. We'll tell you what that's going to cost to build because we have those data sets as well, national by zip code. And we can tell you whether that's a good investment or how much to optimize if you're just trying to increase value or if you're trying to increase ROI or what have you. So we can do that on a whole house level. We can do it on a kitchen level. And we give you those metrics before you spend $1. Now that's a pretty good tool to manage your most important financial asset. The asset that's 80% of Americans' value or net worth when you retire. This is our savings, and this is most people's investment plans. Most people don't have ETFs and stock funds, mutual funds. They have a home. And there's no better place to put money since, I guess, 1870. There's been studies on what are the best investments, risk adjusted, and real estate is the best place to put your money. Another prediction, we can then take that and say, all right, what's the upside value for all the homes in Seattle or even Snohomish, King, and Pierce County, which we did. And this is a couple years old. I think we did this in 2021. There was over $30 billion in remodel value. The average home could get increased. We found, we put it on a scale, so we've got a color scale. We could go right into each property, each neighborhood, and say, let's say I have a business as a remodeler. I could tell you where to target your brochures, where to target your direct mail. So another way to predict things and give people insights going forward. All right, so we dove into, thank you. No.
So in Washington State now, specifically, let's say in Seattle, most of somebody's gonna knock down my home like they have actually all around my block. It's 4 units on it. Condominiumize them and sell them in HOA. Does your model do that? Does your model take the old, yeah, you could upgrade your kitchen, but you know what? Someone's gonna buy your piece of property and.
My software doesn't do as his does. That's what Brian's does. He can tell you best use or, best.
So he's best used on a macro scale, your best used.
Well, the limit for us is we do 4 units and lower in terms of valuation. Our data set is 110 million homes. So we're really single-family residence-oriented in all our analytics. There's other problems on the commercial side, multifamily side.
But he's property, so
Correct.
you're gonna look at that regeneration of, basically your whole overlay now is a minimum of 4 units on every residential lot in Seattle over some size. Right?
If you can build 2 or more, we're going to notice, and we'll tell you. But if you've got something that's already at highest and best use, his product is going to be best. I think if it's not, then probably ours.
So we're going to walk, oh, yes.
I just had a question regarding prediction. With the algorithms that you're using to predict, are you doing something like random forest regression? Are you doing like k-nearest neighbors? Are you doing a neural network, or is it something proprietary when you're trying to do predictive tasks?
Well, it's always going to be something very proprietary.
Linear and
Or
nonlinear.
we don't get investors' money to go build it. We
Linear-
use a multi-layered deep neural network. We use Shapley values, so it's explainable. We use clustering as well. So there's a variety of things we throw at the problem. These were all texts that never were ever applied to residential real estate data sets, so we were unclear how they worked. And we were frankly shocked at how accurate we got very quickly. So we got under 3% accuracy on a home's value, and that was testing out of band, not testing within, the sales cycle. So we thought we could get to somewhere, in the 2.5 would probably be the asymptote we're ever going to get to with a residential home, which is pretty phenomenal when you consider it on a national average. Brian, you had some?
Yeah, we started with linear regression. We ended up using some nonlinear regression. And I guess for the rest, I would tell you my data science team would be happy to have a conversation with you, especially if you're interested
If
in
he
building.
tells you, he'll have to kill you. So typical entrepreneur answer. So we're going to walk through the whole timeline because I think you're going to be surprised at some of the applications here. Maybe not. Maybe you know these. I did a lot of reading before this, trying to see what was out there, educating people on where AI was being applied to real estate, and they didn't cover most of these. So I was kind of surprised. We talked about designing neighborhoods, designing communities, and you saw some of the tools in action. But just identifying them and optimizing them. And there's a lot more to do there, of course, and you'll see that. When we talk about, the city services, that's an immediate demand for adding layers on top of this like we discussed, so we can be more prescriptive about what this development's going to do as far as impact a community. Doing something on the massive scale at the Atlanta Beltline is a great example, and it can be done. You can do it on the High Line in New York, and that's a difficult data set because things go vertical in a hurry. You don't know the nuances of having a high floor condo versus a low floor condo, and there's a lot of valuation challenges from my point of view, and I think he mentioned New York's the toughest data set for him too, in a lot of ways. It's a challenging monster. This idea of building communities that are detached from opportunity. That's just we just got to get smarter about that and help ourselves. So doing the economic analysis of how opportunity exists in a location, or how you can connect people that live there to the opportunity, that's going to be one of the biggest areas to get to equity in housing, that we give the same access to opportunity. Designing the actual structures, the layouts, the plans, that's a great, iterative process. You need some form of feedback you can trust. How do you like living here? You got to get a little more quantitative than that. You got to ask them about how long does it take you to get to the store? How long does it take you to do this? How do you manage your family and what, prevents you from doing it better? And all that can be fed into modeling that figures out how we design houses. Little pet peeve of mine, because I grew up in a house where we used our living room for Christmas, a little bit for Thanksgiving, but you were never supposed to go in there. My dad worked for Boeing, so we had a lot of weird model airplanes of Boeing planes all over a living room. It was just a weird room, and I just think, what a bunch of wasted space. And you think about it, we haven't changed the design of the home as much as we need to fit how we live our lives today. I know people went to these big open things, and then COVID hit and people would kill for a private room and some quiet to be on a Zoom call or to be on a Peloton or what have you. But there's a lot of things we can do for evolving what is a very livable house. Permitting and construction, these are processes where you curate a lot of data, paperwork, documents, approval processes, methodologies for going down and doing check boxes. Prime for AI, prime for software that's smart and knows and takes even human errors out of these things, but certainly time. So compressing that process. So, I was just recently approached and this is a plug I want somebody to respond to and help me. I was presented the opportunity to develop an affordable housing project in South Center, right off of South Center Parkway. It's a 3.5-acre piece of land. I know nothing about development. Because I was involved in Vine Maple Place, they came to me. It's a longtime developer's retired. He doesn't want to go through the grind with Tukwila and King County. I'm forming a team to help figure this out. But this process is going to be a 10-year process. I know it. 11, maybe 12, I don't know. But it's not going to be a couple years. And we need affordable housing yesterday. 10 years from now, that's really signing up for a grind. And I don't know, there's a lot of things that can compress that process. And hopefully AI is just one of them. FICO scores punish home buyers. It's a broken score. Until people like NerdWallet and Karma, Credit Karma, that would allow you to log on, see your credit score, upload a utility bill, and raise your credit score. We had no power over it. Completely powers over us. It decides what kind of rates we get for insurance, buying cars, home mortgages, whether we can even qualify for a home. And it's broken. It's unfair. It's antiquated. AI is a better predictor of somebody's ability to pay off a mortgage than FICO scores. And it has the capability of putting a lot more people in a position to buy a home. There's a real positive. And it's one of those areas where the industry's lined up. Mortgages want to write mortgages. Ask them right now. They've had a 2-year drought of writing mortgages. They want to write mortgages.
Can I ask a question of the audience real quick? Have any of you guys seen the commercial that Rocket put out where the lady's checking all of her subscriptions? And she's like, oh, wow, I thought I was only paying this much for my subscriptions, but I'm paying this much. And they're like, sure, we'll help you manage those. They are a lender. They are doing that, to his point, using AI to figure out what your credit is. And it's going to be a better system than the existing one.
By far.
That's there.
Rocket by far is far and away the #1 mortgage lender in the country. Nobody's even close at this point now. And it's good that they're doing that. But I think that's a really positive, and hopefully we can get people to adopt a different methodology for determining somebody's ability to pay a mortgage going forward. If your behaviors change and you've cleaned up your act, you still get punished in a FICO world. Again, the process of just closing a loan, the financing, paperwork that has to be assembled, all the checks. If you've ever, I'm sure many people in this room have gone through it. It's mind-boggling when you sit down to sign all the docs, all the ridiculousness, the things that are held in place for the sake of title and escrow companies. If you've all paid for title insurance, you've all been robbed. I've been robbed. It's not the biggest thing on that closing statement, so you kind of have to get over it. I don't know if has anybody ever filed a title claim? I started to, and I saw that they just play on breakage. They'll break you before they ever pay anything out. Were you successful? Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot we can do there to improve that process, streamline it, compress it, make it easier, and of course, get more people in the home buying deal. And then what's really important is this is all training data set I just mentioned. Everything in here is a training data set you feed back into the model and make it smarter. So it's really important that we take all these training data sets and improve the process. And then we get just more accurate for everybody, more confident for everybody, and hopefully more fair and equitable. So there's multiple places within all these areas where AI is going to play a significant role and already is. And if you have any questions, we might be able to answer it. But I think our final slide in terms of content is the goal here is to make AI creating more equity, That's probably what it just reduces down to. If AI is not creating more equity, it's being used against us. It's now a technology and a tool that's lording power over us. And if we embrace it and we use it and create a more equitable housing market, then it's a great contributor and a great promise. Can't trust it.
Just to echo what you just said, it took humanity to create all of the training data going into AI, and humanity should be its beneficiary.
Question?
I love your optimism, and I wish I shared it. All you gotta do, I encourage everybody to do this, type in AI and racism, and you'll find plenty of examples of how AI has been trained. Let's face it, if you look at who's in Silicon Valley, it's a bunch of younger, white men, but they're dudes, right? And they trained it on themselves by and large when they're, training intelligence models and all this stuff. And a lot of them, well, some of them at least are skeptical that it's even safe to continue using.
Well, you're using an example of a consumer level AI that's trained on the internet.
Well, and I'll give you an example though about, I understand that city builder, we could use that for the forces of good, and I see that. I'm struggling a little bit with the second example about how you could use it to make housing more expensive, single family housing more expensive. Because, I don't, as a person who can't afford a house in Seattle where I live, I don't want people to make all these expensive improvements that improve their home value, but the cost to me is out of sight. It is reducing opportunities for me as a home buyer. And so you just kind of glossed over that. And then at the end there, when you said performance, there's been a lot of studies about AI being used to maximize rent returns in the private market. Now, we're all affordable housing people, so that gives us, I guess, more of a chance to build more affordable housing, I guess, is the optimistic view. But what are we going to do about that if we're using these models to just wring every dime? Because we'll never build enough income-restricted housing. There's just not enough tax dollars to do it. We have to rely, at least in some ways, on the private market. But if they're going to be using all these tools and wringing every last dollar out of every renter or home buyer, where does that leave the rest of us? Where does that leave low-income people?
Sure. Well, certainly I wasn't making a social commentary on improving your home. Our housing stock is 45 years old on average, and it's home remodeling, home repair, home maintenance is going to be a massive market. We can't build enough units for housing demand, let alone affordable housing. If somebody has a house and it is their net worth and their investment and their savings, they have every right, of course, to pursue a market. There's other economic forces we have to bring to bear to create affordable housing. We're not going to change the market to meet the needs of affordable housing. We're not going to go backwards on values to the point where people can afford a house in Seattle with a minimum wage job. My daughter's a teacher, a school teacher at Hazen High School. She can't afford a house, and she never will be able to afford a house in this area that she lives in. So there's got to be other private, and I believe in private government partnerships. I don't think that the Homes Act is going to create a bunch of efficient, effective, efficient and affordable housing nationwide. I don't believe in my government's ability to execute on that nationwide to solve this affordable housing, give everybody a home. I think there's going to have to be a heavy participation and collaboration between private, and that includes NGOs and ministries and all kinds of nonprofits, with the public sector. And that's how we're going to have to address affordable housing, but we're not going to be talking about using software to remodel your homes. We're going to be talking about how do you build a house that somebody can pay $300 or $400 for a month and live in and be safe and sustainable and be able to raise a family and all that. And that's going to take a whole nother set of activities, not the software we build.
If you love substantive Q&A, we'll be back for 1 hour of that in 5 minutes. I'm going to give you guys the promised 5-minute bio break that I said that I would give you. So you can stay in your seats, you can, get up, move your legs around, but this is a 2.5-hour session, so I just want to respect the fact that you guys are here and give you an opportunity to move around.
Thank you.
We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Questions to ask? We can spend this time any way you want to. Brian can do some more interactive demos if you want. You can show some other cities. You've got a question here.
I do. So, does your program have like an affordable housing layer to it? Or does it look at any market data or anything like that? And I don't know about the rest of the country, but I know specifically here in Seattle, or not here, but specifically in Seattle, we have a whole bunch of buildings that have recently gone up. There's a little pocket of South Seattle where we've got thousands of brand new affordable units. They can't lease. So now we've got buildings that can't convert to permanent financing. It's costing millions of dollars in construction interest. And so from the affordable standpoint, right, like you can't really say anymore, like if you build it, they will come. That's not a model that we're living off of in Seattle in the affordable world. And so your data is great, but the problem is we have people that are like, oh, I can build this building here on this site. This would be the best use, right? But then they actually build it and find out, oh crap, shouldn't have done that. Because it's oversaturated. Either the market is oversaturated.
These are projects that were developed for affordable housing?
Yes, I have multiple.
Are they not leasing up because it's not actually affordable?
Yeah, that's
Or is it?
my next question.
Okay.
Because everybody's building 60% studios.
Yeah.
There's not enough people who want a 60%, who can afford the 60% rent, and who want a studio in the city.
Because the 60% rent in Seattle is about market rent, even market rent for some people who want to drive.
Well, in some areas, the 60% rent in Seattle is market rent, and they're not lowering, so they're not lowering the rents down. So, but if your data set then can say, you can build this, but red flag, you might not lease it, or you are going to have to depreciate some of the rents if you build this.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's what I'm looking
This is where some of the predictive models would have helped those projects figure out how many people in each demographic and unit type there's going to be demand generated for, right? Well, I don't know the specifics of why people overbuilt, studios, if that's what happened, but clearly, something changed or they were bad predictions.
It's the only thing that pencils.
It's what?
It's one of the only things that pencil.
Well, if there's demand, but again, if there's no demand for it, I can build it, but you just said it, they won't come because they're not there.
David, can I respond to something she said?
Please.
So on the affordable piece, the first thing we built that was for affordable housing was an accident. So we built a spatial leg model. Where's my scientist right here? Spatial leg model of rents, basically looking at what are rents on an exact point on a map. So I don't, yeah, sure.
I'm not the scientist.
I live in Bucktown in Chicago. He lives in West Garfield. Anybody from Chicago? Spend time in Chicago? Okay, right there. Tell me where you want to be. Do you want to be in Bucktown or West Garfield? Okay, that's fair. So you can look on a map and they touch each other, right? And you would see that in Bucktown, rents might be $350 a foot. And then right next to that, there's an available plot to be developed. And we would say, if we didn't have a spatial leg model, we would say, hey, you should buy that lot and you should build it up. But there is about a 3-block window between Bucktown and West Garfield. And I was walking, just being myself, walking around a neighborhood in Bucktown. I was walking the wrong direction. The guy stopped me and said, excuse me, young man, how much further are you walking that way? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, you're not walking any further that way. I said, why? He said, you're just going to go back the way you came. And I was like, okay. And then I looked it up when I got back to my hotel. That's an area where it's going to be unsafe for me to be in that neighborhood not knowing what's around me, right? And they're right next to each other. So spatial leg model is allowing us to understand some of the things that don't really show up on maybe a neighborhood level, a census tract level, zip code level, what have you, right? So number one, we learned that a little bit. Number two, actually, I guess there were three. Number two, we decided to rank all of the opportunity zones in the United States by which of those had the most opportunity. actual opportunity for development. And what we found, another happy accident, was that of the 11 top opportunity zones for real estate investment in the United States, 9 of those were neighborhoods of color, historically. You had the Central District in Seattle, you had Anacostia in DC, you had all of these areas, South Shore, I think it was South Shore in Chicago. You had all of these areas that were predominantly communities of color historically. And without that data, right, they don't understand. Optimization, some of those families do own their homes, but they need to understand what those homes are worth when a developer comes up and knocks on their door and says, hey, you know what, I'm happy to pay you $50,000 more than Zillow. Well, we told a bunch of homeowners in Shoreline, just north of Seattle, their homes were worth 2.3 times what Zillow said they were worth, but they had to sell all of them together. This was 8 years ago. We were a tiny little startup. We had a tiny little space in WeWork in South Lake Union. And we rented out City Hall and Shoreline twice, full. People coming out of the side. Because we got on the evening news twice, because we told people you can sell your house for 2 to 3 times what you think it's worth. So people showed up. And we said, you have to sell all your homes as a block, because your 8 homes, according to our model, support 262 affordable homes across the street from the future light rail station. So all of these developers, they'll spend 5 years building that assemblage. Or you guys could just do it for them and make them pay. And they did it, and I think they thought we were a little crazy, and we thought they were a little crazy too, but we trusted it. They gave it, a try, and they sold for $8.2 million. Zillow said their homes were worth $3.5. One guy retired 5 years early. It was cool. And now all of those affordable homes are about 200 feet from a light rail station that just delivered 2 weeks ago, which is pretty cool. Lastly, and I hate to say this, I don't believe office to multifamily is going to save us. But we thought, about a year and a half ago, we thought it might. So we did an analysis of 50,000 office buildings across the United States. We overlaid which of those were already by right zoned for multifamily, and then we did a feasibility study on 50,000 of those buildings. And unfortunately, we found that about 750 of them worked, most of those being in New York City. But we were so excited about the idea it could work that we built a valuation engine saying this is how much an office to multifamily developer could afford to pay for this to make the investments necessary for not just the facade, but the plumbing stacks and everything else necessary. And what we found was that those dollars they could spend to buy the buildings were less than the debt on most of those buildings, which is now what we're seeing play out with this huge crisis on office values, especially in Class B and places like that. So, but we did build that out to show this is how much you could pay if you're trying to rent these out at 30%, 50%, 70% AMI. And so, yeah, we've started to build some affordable housing products, and we're excited about something else we're doing right now. Thank you for the question.
Do you have data sort of operating multifamily homes that overlays with specific tenant characteristics? Like, for example, if you have previously homeless population, it costs you more per unit to operate than a workforce housing project versus market project. That's kind of a known fact. Do you have the data that shows that?
We don't. The companies we work with do, and sometimes they're reticent to share that with the market. So when we talked about earlier the 4 Ps, paid, public, private, proprietary, that would be in the private category. And those companies may choose to include that information into what we call an instance, which is their own little slice of City Builder that holds all of their private data, but they don't typically want us to go out and share that with the market, right? Same thing with GCs. I've been asking for 8 years for a general contractor to show me their cost data. Good luck.
I was intrigued by the ability to predict the value of a kitchen remodel, mostly for my own purposes, not for my work purposes. But it made me think if we're able to do something like that, we could, one of the things we're interested in, I'm in the city of Tacoma, is building decarbonization, because as we try to fight climate change and the affordability crisis,
Absolutely. We just need the data sets. Our models are applicable across a broad spectrum. We just need the data sets. So you're talking about a cost of implementing the materials, the ongoing operating costs post installation, and then it's ROI math. But we need those data sets to model that. So when we do these cost models, we have a zip code level contractor's cost across the entire nation from a partner that collects that data. We also have, within 3 minutes of update, every home transaction that's recorded through the multiple listing service in the country. So we're constantly running a model 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's what allows us to track a cost or change a configuration on a house and remodel it using fresh, current, active data. We'd have to have the same, the fresher, more real-time data we have, the fresher, more real-time our modeling would be high integrity. But we'd just have to have the data sets.
Front row, right here.
Do you have a lot of cities and counties that are coming to you asking for the future, what they should be doing? But if not, why not?
No. It's a good question.
Why not?
It just needs to happen because I think there was a question. These tools are going to be used by aggressive, financial-driven players, and they need to be just as vigorously used by cities, municipalities, and planners to get ahead of them and to keep them at bay. Absolutely.
David said earlier, the public sector lags the private sector. Typically, that's by 3 to 7 years, right? So the things that the private sector is using today, the public sector is going to keep an eye on it. They're going to monitor it. If it works well, if it's got great use cases, if it's got enterprise use cases, things like that, they might adopt that. But as we know, the public sector moves a little more slowly. Plus, we all got hit if we worked in real estate development, real estate, urban development, or in Forest City, we all got hit by COVID, right? So we were this close to closing our first deal with a public sector player in DC, late 2019. Went out there, met with some folks at HUD, FHA, Fannie Mae. It was great. And we had something all set up. COVID hit. They said, coffers are depleted. Absolutely not happening. And of course, we've seen what's happened since, right? And then I think about the time things started improving from COVID, interest rates went up, and that's been tough too. Right there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about, in that Atlanta Belt line, I think it was called, you showed before, there was 5,000 affordable homes, I think you said were built there. I was wondering, was that something that was a result of the city requiring that, and was there modeling that was done to calculate how many affordable houses you have to build to mitigate the implementation of that Belt line project?
Yeah, I'm not specific on the sequencing here. I don't have intimate knowledge, but my understanding is that they started realizing how it was changing the values of these neighborhoods, and it was taking affordable neighborhoods and they were getting redeveloped quickly. So that got surfaced and exposed, and it was a big negative on this project. So they quickly responded by setting up a program to ensure that it was 5,600 homes, and it's just for the workers on the project. They're still doing a lot more to try and mitigate some of the gentrification that's happened in these neighborhoods. They're creating these high-end affluent new neighborhoods on the Beltline and making sure they have enough affordable housing projects identified and funded and executed. So they're just in that process.
I'll also add, that's a fourth domino to fall. The prior 3 to that were borrowing best practices from Scandinavia, which then got tried in Montgomery County, which then got tried in Atlanta, which the current mayor of Atlanta ran on housing and social housing. Catherine Buell, who ran the Amazon Housing Equity Fund, was a leader in housing in Atlanta, I believe. And so it's leadership, it's borrowing best practices, it's taking those case studies. So that's about a fourth domino. And now there's social housing measures being considered in lots and lots of places across the country. How they got to 5,000, I'm not sure. 5,000 sounds like a round number that a politician picks out of their, pocket.
It was definitely a reaction to some things they were seeing occurring when they started it. I don't think it was very proactive at all. And I think now it's become a tenet of the project going forward. It's a big emphasis point now.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, there could be a positive use in there, it seems like some of this modeling, but that didn't quite happen.
But potentially in the future it would, because they know that, like if you're gonna develop something in the future, you know that that has to be a point of inclusion.
Well, I mean,
early in the future.
well, more importantly, there's a data set now that shows what happened to these real estate prices, demonstrating how developers were drawn to this opportunity and what they did with it. So now they can get ahead of it, yeah, and be much smarter. The simple answer is, well, require a certain amount of affordable housing with everything you do along the Beltline. I mean, that's an overly simple solution, but that's better than, oops, we better go now find some places to build housing with all these people displaced. Right, exactly. That's correct. These are worker homes, and I don't know what they're doing with the displaced neighborhoods and the people that got forced out with economic values. And you're going to see the same thing on the Seattle Light Rail, guaranteed, guaranteed.
Yeah, did I miss a question today about displacement? And do either of these models factor in like racial demographics, about who might get displaced?
Well, yeah, I don't think we're at the point where we've layered demographics and modeled the change in diversity. We're close, you're saying, but values. We can talk about values which certainly imply developer interest, activity, and that sort of thing, and that at least gets you started with thinking about, okay, what do we need to require of this development and this developer if they're going to go in here, knowing that there's going to be some economic impact to people that lived here. But I don't think we're yet at the point where we have models that start to say, all right, it's going to be this much more diverse or less diverse, or these. We could get there. That's another layer, and we've got the foundation now to build on top of.
There's also a challenge with that data set. The challenge is that we have historically had a problem with using maps to figure out where people of color and other people are, and creating segregation. So there has been, for at least a couple decades, a push back against that. The challenge with that is now we can't measure displacement of certain types of communities, right? We can look historically at where those communities were centered, but there are data providers that don't want us to use that data in our sets and in our analyses. So that can be a challenge because, like anything that's a tool, it can be used for good or for evil, right? Yeah, we did that. We found that the neighborhood that was being taken advantage of most in Seattle was the Central District. That is the historic black neighborhood of Seattle, for those of you not from Seattle. And so we actually teamed up with Jebediah Gardner and Gardner Global, and he had just opened up his brokerage, which was based next to the gum wall over there in Seattle. And we had 3 people come into our office. We showed them this technology. This was a long time ago. And we said, we would like you to bring this message to your neighbors, because sometimes the message is hard to share with people that, are going to say, well, what's in it for you, right? Because historically, that's the right question to ask. And so we said, why don't you go to your community and talk to them about all these values? And so we gave them all of this information about what all of these homes were worth so that they'd have it and they'd be equipped to deal with these savvy real estate developers coming in and buying out their properties. So that's a good idea.
First of all, thank you for the question. It's very important.
Yep.
Grew up in Tacoma. Hilltop was predominantly an African American community. Central District, same way.
Yep.
My life team was I know in Houston, Seattle, sound transit, Housing Finance Commission, sound transit for the partnership, legislature passed laws, and now we're trying to build affordable housing on land that sound transit owns. That's where I'm concerned about the public. The governments aren't looking at your software to see these target areas because they put their head in the sand. That to me is very
That-
difficult to understand. Why they would not look at this, see the problems of the past, how redlining, how my parents who came here in '62 were told they couldn't live in certain neighborhoods. That's what they were told. You can't lose neighborhoods. Moved away, military, came back in '74, told the same damn thing. You can't live here. It made America what it is. We can fix these wrongs, but we put our head in the sand every damn time. Who's going to stand up? Who can you work with to stand up to help change these things?
I love that question.
That's,
I've been
that's an
asking that
open
question
window
for,
that's closing because people are scrambling to get real estate and develop around those stations, for sure.
I love that question, and I think that it's a question that should linger in the air for a minute. And I think that if people have ideas, I would like to hear those ideas. Please send me those people. Don't send me, this state, this city. Send me people that I can call on and I can say, hey, I'd like to have a sit down with you and talk about how we can help, or ask, can we help? Because I would love to know who those people are. And I know you guys come from lots of places. You guys know who those people are. They're leaders. They may not be loud and on a stage, but they make their voices heard in the places they work, in the communities they're in. Love to have those conversations.
Yeah, I don't want to overcommit Brian, but I can just keep hearing him offer to partner with these cities and help them do the modeling. So this is not a technology acquisition, integration, cost issue. Here's a guy that cares and wants to help, and he's got some tools that can help people figure out what impacts are going to happen here and how people are going to develop your community. So it's a way to get ahead of it.
I will give you one little bright spot on the history of really not getting any outreach from the public sector. Last week, I got to go out to the Urban Land Institute Pacific Summit in Honolulu. I'd never been to Hawaii before. There's a reason people like to go to Hawaii. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. But at the end of that, we did actually get some engagement from some folks connected to the public sector. So I do believe there's going to be some capability to help there and some engagement there, which is important because if you guys don't know this, the most rent-burdened state in the United States is Hawaii. It's like 49.7% of the community. Anyway, so I'm hopeful.
Do other your models factor in any insurance issues? Like I know I heard earlier in a meeting that insurance costs are rising for multifamily projects, and especially with climate change, sea level rise. Is that what you guys are talking about?
Can I get the visual one more time? So we do have environmentally critical areas, but for modeling, I would say this is just a binary, right? It's a yes or a no. Do we have landfills, brownfields, environmental covenants, riparian corridors? This is stuff that I didn't really have a lot of experience working with until I got onto the planning commission, and now we have hour meetings about riparian corridors. But this is really important stuff. If you'd lived on this continent for thousands of years, like some of the tribes, this is stuff they know. This is stuff that we're learning, like in the last 100 years, right? There's a lot of tribal knowledge that we're learning from. But we do have this, I would say the best modeling I've seen. There's a gentleman by the name of Lucky, that is his name, Lukky, out of London. He runs a company called Climate X. He did a demo for me during COVID about 3 years ago and showed me how much sea level rise was going to change real estate in big cities like the Tem and Miami and all these places where you don't have a lot of elevation, but you've got water right there. And Google just led their last round of funding maybe a month ago. So very exciting to see that kind of data start to percolate in. But it's newer. That's a more nascent field.
This is related to that, we signed a deal with one of the top 10 P&C insurance companies in the country. You've all heard that State Farm, which is the largest home insurance company in the United States, they have 21% market share, pulled out of California, they pulled out of parts of Colorado, and they pulled out of Florida. And they left a lot of homeowners without any options for home insurance. And the basic reason is they could not model the repair costs given now there's one model that says what are the chances, and this is timely today because we've got a system hitting the northwest, whatever, panhandle and down the Tampa Bay and that area, and it's a 15-foot surge. So here we go again. I flew into Naples last November, and I still saw 1 out of 4 homes had a blue tarp on its roof, and I imagine they're either self-insured or they underinsured. I mean, these are not even getting repaired. So the problem is insurance companies can't model the repair costs. These have been escalating, as you know. If you've done any remodeling or tried to buy a house, you know that the remodel costs, the repair costs of homes has skyrocketed too. And so they became unprofitable in these areas where you have this widespread damage profile. And so we were correlating the type of disaster to the repair cost, not to the chances of it happening, but if it did happen, when you have a wide-scale disaster, logistics price goes up, material prices go up, and labor goes up. People, drive 3 states away to go get jobs because they're going to make a lot of money on the opportunity of repairing all these homes. So those costs all escalated, so they said, we're losing money on all these policies, we're out. Now, there's a legislation, solution there where they can't just back out of markets, and that's got to be part of this too. But they need those analytics to figure out how to rate these policies and make sure they're keeping track of your home value and its reconstruction value if it gets taken down to its foundation, which is a real problem. And so that was a role where our software was going to, mark every home. And if they got a policy that was out of whack in terms of repair costs, it would literally trigger them. And you get a phone call and says, let's do a policy review. And that's a practical way from the insurance side of managing their risk and cost. And again, as cities and municipalities get ahead of this whole thing, we can start holding insurance companies more to the line because we'll have more information or as much information as they have about what they're insuring and what it costs them to insure that.
Can I ask if any of you guys know what this game is? Someone said it.
I guaranteed him there'd be a bunch of people in the audience that would
Who said
recognize
SimCity?
Somebody over
Nice. Yeah, so you brought up the question about environmental risks and insurance. SimCity's been telling us about environmental risks since 1989. I mean, you lost 20,000 hard-earned dollars here because there was a major earthquake, right? Like, this is stuff that we've known to think about for a long time. And frankly, the reason I have this slide up is this is the reason I'm probably here. When I told my dad I wanted to be a musician, he said, bad idea. When I told him, okay, I'll join the Marines, he was like, bad idea. So I was like, man, the only other thing I like is video games. So I think that's probably part of why I'm here.
Any other questions? Yes.
If I was going to have a plant in the audience, it'd be him. So I'll show you what it does.
Yeah, we couldn't hear it.
I'll try to paraphrase you if that's okay. Tell me if I'm wrong. He says, sounds like, first of all, he identified he's an affordable housing developer and operator, I believe. And he's asking, is this just site identification or what's kind of the scope of what you guys could do to help us? I'm going to pull this up so you can see it a little larger. I think this is really where we help. If any of this looks familiar to you, this is a 25-hour stack or chunk of work that you go through as an analyst or on an investment team. If you're an affordable housing developer, you might be the executive director and the person that does this, because typically those outfits, if they're community-based organizations, don't have all the resources. So you've got everybody doing everything, is what we found. But best practices, really smart people, they get through this in 25 hours. We've seen over 30,000 sites that we call this guy the super analyst, who he went through all these sites. He was able to go through an entire process all the way to investment committee in 30 minutes. So it's a compression of computation is the right way to think about it. It is not ever going to compress your capability as a human to have good judgment. It's not going to compress your capability to be creative or to design or think orthogonally. But it is going to look at things you do over and over and over that are rote, tedious, cumbersome things that can be copied very quickly by artificial intelligence, and it's going to compress those things down to a fraction of the amount of time so that you can do the things that I think humans will always be best at: creativity and judgment. For-profit or nonprofit? For-profit, 25 to 100,000 a year. Nonprofit, we'll talk. It'll be less to free.
Can a city put in their permitting codes into this software somehow to help people interested in developing their properties get through that process a lot quicker? Especially for someone who's totally new to the process. As all of Washington upzones, and Tacoma's upzoning even a little bit more, what we'd really like to see is people who've never built anything before build 1 or 2 units, but they're also the people who have no idea how to do it. And one thing that we don't really know how to do is help someone who's never done it understand how to do it better than what we already do, which is sit at the permit counter and talk them through language they don't understand.
I think your question's a good one. And I don't know if the answer is to teach them how to do it. There's a lot of people here, if you look at all the capabilities in the room, that know how to do it. I think the first step is education. We have to tell them, you have property where this can happen. This could happen at all. And Natasha Chen, do you guys remember her way back in the way from Cairo 7? She came by our office, she put us on the evening news, and 10,000 people within the next hour when they aired it on Cairo 7 signed up to find out if they had a property that was worth more to a developer. That was some supercharged education. It was really cool. I think that would be one place to start, certainly. We could tell people that you have this property. Whether or not we want to turn everyone to a real estate developer, not so sure about that. But we can help them figure out that they've got property that could be developed. And I'd love to continue that conversation. If you have more ideas, just send me a message. I'm on LinkedIn. You can email me. I'll give you guys that information. You want to look at some cool, pretty pictures? Got more. Yeah. Hi. I think this broadly relates to all AI. Your points earlier about trust, truth. You don't trust this. I don't know if you ever trust this, right? You trust experience, you trust your gut, you trust things that you know. That's the domain of judgment, and I think it's our domain. And so, no, I don't believe this is going to be the best urban planner. I don't believe it's going to be the best architect, the best investor, the best anything. What it might do is it might help us compress some of the rote, tedious, cumbersome, repetitive things that we do all the time, or simulate a lot of things without taking that risk. You talked about you could lose your pants on one bad deal, right? Simulate the deal. Simulate it with a Monte Carlo analysis 50 different ways, right? That's what this is really good at. And I think, I was always told as a kid, like, there is no future in video games. My dad would see me play hours of video games. There's no future in this. Well, now we can simulate actual cities and the way that cities might change, right? And how we might benefit. And if we can get those simulations to a point where we've got positives, meaning like someone gives us feedback, like you give me some feedback on a model, that's a human feedback loop. That's where this could be very valuable, I think. If this thing just learns from itself, I don't know if you guys have seen, but like DALL-E, when it takes computer-generated images and continues to learn on those, they get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. They look all pixelated and gross and weird. So the human component is really vital. But again, don't trust it.
I thought that was a good point, thank you. Speaking as a planner and being a developer too. I think the advice to trust your gut is actually kind of in opposition to what she was saying. Is that a lot of the way we did urban planning for a long time was by a bunch of old white guys.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you're not old, but you're a couple white guys too. And the people who
I'm
live
old by
there
any
were
definition.
white guys. So why should we say, oh, well, trust your gut, when listening to the guts of old white guys who were in charge of cities led to, redlining in the 30s and restrictive covenants up through the 60s, and, and excluding people from economic systems that helped lots of white people get ahead. So trusting your gut, I don't think is really the best advice. If you want to respond to it, hey, I would suggest you do the opposite. You say, what if we modeled a fairer system? What if we instead said, what if we hadn't excluded all the Chinese people who immigrated to the international district and gave them loans instead? What would scale have looked like? That's what I want. And then, okay, let's model that. I would love to see a generated image of that. And then how maybe, okay, we can't go back in time, but maybe there's some things that AI can help us figure out how to get there, right? That's what I'm curious about.
I'm not sure we have done a good job of trusting our gut societally. I think we have a system set up to extract the maximum amount of capital possible out of any transaction, and we don't have a sustainable capitalist system. So we have a for-profit system. We don't have a for-sustainable profit system. And I think that one word makes a big difference. And I think if we were trusting our gut, we would say, wait a minute, the only thing that grows this way forever and ever and ever in the natural world is cancer or things that take over ecosystems. So I don't think we've done a good job trusting our gut. I think we've trusted the loudest, and we've trusted the people with maybe the most resources, but we've got to come together and collaborate. And I do think we have to listen to our gut some. We have to use and exercise our judgment some, and then our expertise and our experience and share things. That's my position. And then this stuff can play too.
Yeah, free markets aren't free. There's a cost to everything.
Right. Yep. Here's New York, Honolulu. There's Redmond, my hometown. This is Boston. Anyone know where that is?
DC.
Very good. There's DC. How about this one? Nice. Nashville. So if you're struggling because you need to find housing development sites, or if you want to know how much housing could be built on publicly owned land or land that's controlled by some party with a mandate to help people, we're happy to talk. End of my presentation. I think we've got another 10 minutes, and then if some of you guys weren't here early on, I wanted to exhort any of you who might be so inclined as to do so to step out of here 25 minutes early, go upstairs and check out the History of Black Homeownership exhibit. It's really cool. It's got videos, it's got things you can walk around and check out. It's got like a 5-act kind of play. And those guys have done a really good job, but they are off the beaten path. So I don't think everyone's going to see them. So I just want to make you aware that they're up there. And if you haven't checked it out, go take a look if you're interested. We do have some time for a few more questions if you guys want to ask. Linked with what?
What's that?
Can you, have we linked it with what?
Like brokerage, active brokerage listings, because I can see it, but I'm like, okay, so what's actually for sale?
Yeah, we were told 10 years ago that everything's for sale by the developers we work with.
But I'm a developer, and that's not true.
Yeah, fair. No, we don't include like LoopNet or CoStar or MLS data because the vast majority of the developers we've worked with have told us they would prefer to buy off market. But there would be some benefit to be able to having some filter on there that says this is being marketed right now by a broker. I agree with you on that. Yeah, most of the developers are working with a brokerage that use kind of the CRM where we push all of the found properties and then they go out and shake the trees and see what falls off. Yeah, good question. Any more questions? Thank you guys so much for the engagement. This has been outstanding. You guys have asked amazing questions, so really appreciate it. Yeah.